Besides my knife. Good morning. My name is Seth and I'm an alcoholic. I'll tone it down now. Good morning. Welcome to those of you joining us here in person in the club, and welcome to those of you joining us on Zoom. If you're joining via Zoom, please make sure to mute your microphone. Once the speaker starts, we'll turn off the ability to unmute your mic until the speaker is finished. We also only allow chat to the host. If the internet drops during the meeting and the Zoom call ends prematurely, we will start the Zoom again for you to rejoin. If you have questions, please use the Zoom chat feature. If you're here at the club, we only have 2 parking spots and they're labeled 4th D. If you're parked in Once Upon a Balloon or Northern Pipe and Glass, shame on you. But if you're parked in either of those, please move your car now or it will get towed. The key word being will. Probably will.
Oh, if we're where?
Once Upon a Balloon or Northern Pipe and Glass.
What about that pole dancing thing?
That's probably fine. Yes. I think you have a membership. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, anyways. Trying to be good neighbors here, people. If you're parked in a spot, I already said that. Please do not smoke directly in front of the building. We ask that you smoke kind of on the sidewalk. There's a cigarette bin out that way, so by the bike racks. This is the hybrid open Sunday morning speaker meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Please pause for a moment of silence, followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. If you're here at the club, we'll pass the basket for the 7th tradition. On Zoom, we'll put a link to this group's Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal accounts. If you're here at the club and are on paper, please bring it to one of us after the meeting. If you're on Zoom and need to let your PO know you're attended, just shoot us a note in the chat and then we can send you an email. And Laura is going to read chapter 3, more about alcoholism.
I'm Laura, I'm an alcoholic. Chapter 3, more about alcoholism. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently may be, has to be smashed. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. We are like men who have lost their legs, they never grow new ones. Neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which will make alcoholics of our kind like other men. We have tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances, there have been brief recovery, followed always by still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet. Despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe they are in that class. By every form of self-deception and experimentation, they will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule, therefore non-alcoholic. If anyone who is showing inability to control his drinking can do the right about face and drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to him. Heaven knows we have tried hard enough and long enough to drink like other people. Here are some of the methods we have tried. Drinking beer only, limiting the number of drinks, never drinking alone, never drinking in the morning, drinking only at home, never having it in the house, never drinking during business hours, drinking only at parties, switching from scotch to brandy, drinking only natural wines, agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job, taking a trip, not taking a trip, swearing off forever with and without a solemn oath. Taking more physical exercise, reading inspirational books, going to health farms and sanitariums, accepting voluntary commitment to asylums. We could increase the list ad infinitum.
Thanks, Laura. And Walt's gonna read the 12 traditions.
Yeah, well.
Hi, y'all. I'm Walt. I'm an alcoholic. The 12 traditions. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 7, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. I'm Walt, I'm an alcoholic.
All right, does anybody have a sobriety birthday today or during the past week? Paula.
By the grace of God and the fellowship of this program on Wednesday, I celebrated 40 years.
All right, and if you're not familiar with how it works, I think Paul is passing around her 40-year coin, so just give it some juju and make sure it gets back to her.
I need the support.
Yeah. Congratulations. Are there any AA members from outside the Missoula area with us today? If so, please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. Cool, welcome. Cool. You've been going to meetings, you got like a phone list and a meeting list and all that? Are there any non-AA visitors with us this morning? If so, please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. Welcome. Is there anyone here with a suspected alcohol problem, attending his or her very first AA meeting? If so, would you please introduce yourself by your first name only? All right, Cindy is going to introduce today's speaker.
Is that me? Hi, I'm Cindy. I'm an alcoholic. If I would have known I was introducing one of my favorite people on earth, I would have brushed my hair this morning. When I got sober, my sponsor would always say, you're one of two things in Alcoholics Anonymous. You are an example or a visual aid. And she's like, when what's it gonna be? Are you gonna be an example of how to do this or a visual aid of what not to do? And I wanna say, I was the former, but I was actually the latter most of the time. I have not done anything perfectly in this program, except for not put a mood altering substance in my body. But Lainey is an example of what to do. And if you're a woman in this program, and you're wanting to know how to do this, watch her and you can't go wrong. I mean, she is somebody who got sober on Zoom on a meeting that I helped start. And I just thought, how can anyone do this? COVID really showed us that Alcoholics Anonymous, in a pinch, we know what to do. We know how to pivot and shift gears. And she's a great example of, I don't think I even met you for like a year or so, or 6 months, like in physical person, but we'd hang out in the parking lot meeting after this meeting and really get to know each other. And Alcoholics Anonymous has this way that if you're willing to unzip just a little bit, and just show a little bit of who you are, it's that language of the heart. And so it doesn't matter. We don't know any time or space when it comes to the language of the heart. And so anyone who does not know her, you in for, if I haven't said it already, a real treat, meaning like, this is a girl who is, she does not look like her story. I will tell you that. And rarely do any of us after we get sober for a little bit, but she has come in. She has done, I'm not her sponsor, thank God. Or she wouldn't be as far along as she is, but she has listened to her sponsor, and her sponsor is a sister of mine in sponsorship. So she and I both have the same sponsor. And I have to say that she balks at nothing. And she is all about action and service, and has been from the beginning, even on Zoom. And so I think that is why she has so much of what I want for myself. So I'm going to introduce what I like to call my mini me, even though there's no truth to that. It's just wishful thinking on my part, but my good friend Lainey.
Good morning. My name's Lainey. I'm an alcoholic. Cindy, thank you so much for that. I feel like if you listen to her and you don't watch too closely. As an example, I do my best, but still very, very human. Before I start though, I wanted to just take a minute to acknowledge the holiday weekend and Memorial Day, and thank you to anybody in the room who has served, and just to take a moment to do whatever you wish to honor all of those that have sacrificed their lives for us. So I'm super grateful to be here today, and thank you, Crystal, for asking me to speak. And happy 6 months. I know that you had 6 months last week that she shared yesterday in the noon meeting. And I haven't had the pleasure to get to know Crystal very well on a personal level yet. But I know her she showed up to meetings really well. And I know that in her 6 months has not been easy. There's been a lot that you've dealt with. And I just really appreciate you leaning in and staying in the herd and showing up and sharing what you have to get through it. Because 6 months is such a big deal. That's a really big deal. And thank you for your service here. Okay, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. The obsession to drink started like way before a first drink was like ever in reach for me when I was a very little girl. I grew up in a drinking household, and I mean, when I was a kid, like I would play, like most kids like play house and stuff. Like I would play like going to the club. Me and my friends, we'd like tie our shirt ups, and we'd have pencils with like erasers. The erasers would be like the lit part of it. And we'd pretend to be smoking cigarettes and spin around and get dizzy. Like I couldn't wait to party. I could not wait to party. And so I didn't realize, until after I got sober, just how far back that obsession goes. And with my family being drinkers, we are like legal family drinking age was 13. So that's when you were allowed to drink. But I was 7 years younger than my sister and like a bulk of a bunch of my cousins. So they all reached 13 far before I did and could drink, like all sit together at the table and drink with the adults. And my really cool aunt, whenever I'd finish my Pepsi can, she'd put just like a little bit of beer in there for me so that I could sit at the table with the big kids and drink. So from that, like a young age, I learned that was what we did. That was who we were as a family, as a people, but that's also what you needed to do to like sit at the big kids table and like be a part of. And once my parents split up for good when I was about 12, they were always on and off, like from the time I was born every other year. And so when I was 12, I had this great freedom because they hated each other. They didn't talk to each other at all. So I could say that I was at one's house and be wherever I say I was at the other's house, and I could be completely under the radar. So once I was about 12, that's when it got really, really fun. It got super fun. And I can remember just everything about it. So like not even just like I was in love with drinking and I was in love with alcohol, and the whole thing was it felt very like glamorous and romanticized. But not just the booze and like what it did for me, but like everything leading up to it. Like I can remember being in 6th grade and me and my best friend stole a beer from my dad's fridge and like hid it in the basement until we had a chance to drink it. And it was an Icy Light, which I don't know if anybody's familiar with Pittsburgh or PA. It's a terrible beer, period. But we also let it sit in the, it was cold and then it got warm. So we let it sit in the basement in a Pittsburgh summer for 3 months until we had an opportunity to drink it. So it was like skunk and like really, really bad. But like going down to get it whenever we finally had an opportunity to go drink it and like cracked it open, it tasted, it was disgusting. But like even that was so much fun, like just the elusiveness of it all. I just loved. And yeah, and it was great. I mean, high school was fantastic. After high school was even better because I didn't have anything to like wake up for every day. I mean, I went to community college for a couple years, but like I flunked out I was on academic probation pretty quickly. Like I would, and I was fine with that. Like I just went because that was something I was supposed to do. But my main priority was like being able to drink and party as much as I want, and look as good as I wanted. And that was all that mattered. And then there's always a down point, right? It's like you watch like Scarface or any of the like movies, like drug movies or whatever, and it's like it always starts and seems so fun, and then it's like it's gotta end somewhere.
But it really worked for me really well for a really long time. And I don't know if like being in the millennial generation, like I think it's funny that now I hear like Gen Zers talk about like if somebody gets too drunk, it's like cringe, like it's like gross to get trashed. And like millennials like growing up when it was like, you know, Britney Spears and like Lindsay Lohan, like just trash, like that was like fine, you know, that was like, so it didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong. And all through my late teens and even early 20s, like it was common social etiquette to like, let's try to black out tonight. Like, let's get as drunk as we possibly can and like not remember the night. Like there's multiple songs about it, you know, it's like that was just the culture. So it seemed fine. It seemed totally fine. And then when I was 21, I met, or I mean, it was before that, I was probably 19, and I met this super cool guy who was super hot and also loved drinking as much as I did. And so we had a really fun relationship for a couple years. We moved down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and in that time, he passed away in a boating accident, and it sucked. And after that, that was like when drinking was never fun again after that. And I mention that because it took me 7+ years to realize that it wasn't the fact that he passed away of like why drinking was never fun. It was because life had finally hit, and that drinking solution didn't work for me anymore, and I didn't have any other solution. Like that was when drinking stopped working for me. And I didn't have any other tools to deal with it. So through that, throughout my 20s, it just kept going down and down and getting worse and worse. And then I noticed that like my friends, you know, they got to mid-20s and like they finished their colleges and like started getting jobs, and some were getting married or like settling down a bit more. And I was still in the Lindsay Lohan, like blackout, let's get as drunk as we possibly can. Like I couldn't stop that. Like they were able to start like turning that down, and I just couldn't. Like doing ridiculous stuff, like I would set alarms on my phone at the bar to like remind me to go home. And people were like, what are you doing? And I didn't, you know, it didn't work. I didn't listen to them anyway, but I was trying to do stuff like that to control my behavior and my drinking and keep it in line. So little things like that were indicators, but like I could never imagine a life without drinking, and I didn't want to. I mean, that was my best friend in this whole romanticized thing my whole life. And it's not even that it was like, oh, maybe drinking's like, it just wasn't even in my scope of thinking. Like it was because my boyfriend died. Like it was because my parents, it was because of all these other things. And drinking just definitely was not the problem. And so I noticed this big, like that hole a lot of us talk about. There's this big gap within myself. And during the week, because I was really sick of feeling like I just wanted to die. I was really sick of that misery and that pain that just kept getting bigger and bigger and worse and worse. So I would do all kinds of things to try to make me feel better. That was read, that Laura read from page 31 today. You know, I started every day with a TED Talk, and I went back to school, and I got a personal training certificate, and I did volunteer work, and I was doing all of these things to try to make me feel better. And I ended up getting a good job. So it was like Monday through Friday, I would be this one person and like take 2 steps forward. And then the weekend would come and I would take 10 steps backwards. And this gap between who I wanted to be and who I knew I deserved to be versus like who I actually was just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the other obstacle I ran into getting sober was growing up I grew up in Pittsburgh, and in that time, between, you know, 2010 and 2020, the opioid pandemic was really, really bad. And like, I mean, I had friends literally weekly, like dropping dead. Like there was not even a shock factor to it anymore when you heard that somebody died. And I would see, like, I knew people like that were in the rooms, and I felt like, well, they deserve to be there. Like they have a real problem. Like I just drink too much and fucking hate excuse me, and hate myself and my life. So that was another obstacle that kept me away from the rooms for a while. But in my attempt to keep trying to make myself feel better and like make my external life feel better, hoping that it would make me internally feel better, I got a life coach, and she got like real fuzzy with me, and she's like, well, what do you really, really want to do? And I was like, I really want to help addicts and alcoholics. I'm like, I'm not one, but like my family's full of them. And like, I really think that I can help them. Like I've been so helpful to them before. And she was like, well, why don't you try Alcoholics Anonymous? You know, they've been getting people sober for a really long time, and doing a really good job at it. So like go to meetings, you know, do what they do, see how they do it. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And I've been to AA plenty of times before this. I got a DUI when I was 21, and I had like a 0.3 like blood alcohol level. Like they were like, and I kept trying to tell them, I was like, oh, just like wrong place, wrong time, wrong place, wrong time. And they were like, you're 108 pounds. Like you shouldn't have been able to walk to your car, let alone like get in and operate it. Like you have a serious problem. And I remember I had to do like extra classes, and we watched the My Name is Bill Wilson movie with James Woods. And I was like, this is a really good movie. This is entertaining. And so yeah, and then my mom had been in AA. So like I had been around AA a lot before, which had also helped validated that like it wasn't for me. So because my pride was way too big for me to ever go, but on the suggestion of a life coach who I was paying a lot of money to help make me feel better, I was like, all right, I'll do what she tells me to do. And so the beautiful intertwinings of this story. So my boyfriend who had passed away in Myrtle Beach, his dad, whose big book this is actually, is an avid member of Alcoholics Anonymous. So whenever she suggested that, I was like, I know exactly who to call. So I called him, and he really good 12 stepper, because he had been saying for years, he would always joke that like they were going to save seats for Kurt and I. So he knew, and like, but there was never a like, about time, or like, told you so. Thank you. And so he invited me over, put on a pot of coffee, gave me the book, answered any questions that I had, and never once like suggested that I was an alcoholic, like really left hands off for me to come to that conclusion on my own. And he was like, why don't you take this book home and just read it, you know? And here's when meetings are, come to the meeting. So, but it still, you know, again, wasn't for me. So that was easy for me to do. And I would go to meetings, and I would only go to, there was one speaker meetings on a Friday night that I would go to, and I was the last one in, first one out. And I, you know, knew people there, and they'd be like, oh, are you like, welcome? Are you here for you? And I'm like, no. My coach told me to come, or whatever. They were ready for me, you know, they were ready to finally welcome me, but I was not, you know, and I would not put my hand up and say that I was new, or that, you know, I was visiting, or anything like that. And then I would leave the meeting and like talk shit about how cliquey people seemed and how unwelcoming they were. You know, I did nothing to like put myself in there. And so also in that interim, I'm reading this book, and I get to that page 31 where it talks about all the things that we've tried. And what I've noticed about this book, and that this program does for me and my disease, is it shines a light on all those icky, dark, cold corners in my body. And once I see that, I can't unsee it. You know, when I read that, that was one of those things that like, I can't unsee this about myself. And I don't know what they meant by health farms, but at that point in my life, I had come out to Montana on a farm to like try to fix myself and all of this. And I was like, that's so specific. Like, this is so crazy. This is so crazy. I had done all of those things. You know, I used to like do mantras before I'd go out drinking, and I would only bring out like, you know, this much cash with me so that I could only drink this much alcohol. Like I was trying everything that I could possibly think of. To stop drinking, including like churches and stuff. And I was somebody that when I went to an AA meeting for my DUI, and I remember being in a church basement, and on the wall there was a sign that said like Jesus saves. And I was so angry, and I was so offended at that sign. And meanwhile, like I'm sitting in a church basement, like why that bothered me so much. But like, that's where I was with my like opinions about religions and about God. But I was also getting to a point where I was desperate enough, to start seeking out religious relief before AA even. But so anyway, yes, and then the pandemic happened and I was like, thank God I don't have to go to those meetings anymore because, they weren't having them like when it first happened. And in that time, I also moved to Montana for good. And so it was about 6 months between my last drink and the time I got into the program. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really remember my last drunk. Like there's an occasion where I'm pretty sure it was like a work occasion. And I was like, cause I always felt like I'm in a job that I don't deserve. And I made a complete fool of myself. And something else that's interesting is that at our, team retreats, there was a period of time where we were not allowed to have liquor anymore, hard liquor. You just sound like beer and wine. But since I've gotten sober and my boss now knows about it, liquor is back in the mix. So I don't know if there's like a correlation there or if it's just like one of those really funny coincidences. But I just, made a total ass of myself at a work thing. And I was like, that's it. The mask is off. Like they're finally seeing who I really am. And like, I'm going to lose everything. So all of those things were slowly coming into place. And then, so I had stopped drinking and I was able to white knuckle and I got here to Montana and I was talking to a friend from Pittsburgh who was really struggling with meth at the time. And I was like, I don't know much about meth or like what recovery for that looks like. I'm like, but I've been, wanting to try an online meeting here. So like, why don't we do one of those together? And she was into that. So we did that. And it was the MOP meeting that Cindy had mentioned. And I stayed and she didn't, but it's like, that got me in and, kept me here. And I don't know what it was about that group. I think there was something really special that I needed to get sober during the pandemic. A lot of people are like, I don't know how anybody gets sober during the pandemic. I don't think I could have done it any other way. I had way too much pride to come into a room of people without a mask and say, I'm an alcoholic. I really needed to tiptoe my way in, and doing that through a computer screen and like the incubator of my own home felt really, really safe. And then even when I did come to in-person meetings, I literally had a mask that I was wearing that like helped make me feel really, really safe. And thank God the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, because that allowed me to come around long enough, read the book long enough to really hear your stories long enough to really understand I am an alcoholic. I have this thing. I felt this way and this could work for me too. But that group was so special. And there's so many people in this room whose faces, like, I just can't imagine my sobriety without you guys. And Cindy being one of them. I wouldn't have guessed that through even a computer screen, like you could feel so loved and wrapped up. So thank you for being there and starting that meeting. And the power of like showing up as a newcomer. And I've told Kathy this before too, but like there was the early sunrise meeting that I would go on, and I didn't know Kathy then, but I knew every time I went to that meeting, Kathy was there. And like just seeing her face every time, like that consistency built a lot of trust and just was something that I think is so small but powerful when I was new, that made me feel really, really safe. So I appreciate everybody that shows up consistently, because just sometimes just showing up is enough. And sometimes just showing up is all, like, that's the best I can do in a day, is like just show up, like I won't feel like it. I'll have a billion reasons of other things that I could or need to be doing. And sometimes just showing up is the best I can do. So, all right, coming back to baseline. So that was what it was like and kind of what happened. Oh, and then also, so in that online meeting, somebody had put their number in the chat to say that they were willing to sponsor. And I don't really know why I took that like bait and called that woman, but I did. I don't even think her picture was up. I think she had like I don't think she was like live on that meeting. I don't remember actually seeing her face. And the suggestion that I've heard around the rooms of like, oh, find somebody that has what you want. Like, I think if that works for you, that's great. Like, I didn't want anything that any of you guys had. I had a lot of entitlement. I thought I was better than everybody here. You know, I didn't want to not drink. And I just, so that wouldn't have worked for me, but there was something that I was like, I'm going to give her a call and just see where this goes. And that was truly when everything changed, because from my own like self-knowledge and trying to take myself through the steps, like I read the book and I was looking on these recovery websites and watching videos and doing worksheets, and like it was kind of helpful work. But when I went through it with a sponsor, that is truly when everything changed. Everything changed. So, and going through the steps, like, I mean, step one is a constant, which is why I need to keep coming to meetings, because every time I hear your stories, it validates and reminds me of what an alcoholic I am and my life being unmanageable and that I need to be here. And my sponsor and I, like, we just went through the steps in the book as we got to them. And two is interesting. I mean, it still is like my relationship with a higher power. Like I went through all of it with like, I couldn't call it God at first, and it couldn't be a him, and it had to be a she, but then it couldn't quite be a she either. And like, and I'll still pivot where it's like, there's still some days where I can't call it God. I don't want to call it God. I'll call it universe, or I'll call it source. But one of the benefits that I found from being so desperate and feeling so terrible, where I did start seeking like religious insight, is that like I can see God in all of it now. Like it does not matter what religion or what spiritual talker or what corner of that universe, like I can see God in all of it. Like it's all kind of saying the same thing to me, just in different words, with people's different experiences of us trying to wrap our human words and arms around this thing that none of us can, none of us can. So that had taken out so much judgment and opinion for me, which has been really, really, really helpful. But in trusting that like that power greater than myself can restore me to a place of sanity, that's still a work in progress. I still got to trust that that God knows what's best for me, and that I simply do not, and what I want doesn't necessarily matter. Like that's not what's important. Not that God doesn't care about that, but that's not the idea of the game here. And fourth step, I couldn't wait to get to the fourth step, because I'm obsessed with myself, and I love that inner work. And I was sure that at the end of the fourth step, my husband was right on the other side. And that's what I really, really wanted. So I was so motivated to do it and to get through it. So much so that when we got through the steps, my sponsor had to be like, hey, there's 6 and 7 for a reason. Like you can't work yourself out of your problems. Like you need to bring God into this. You need to do some more praying. It can't just be like the work, because I like the action part of it. I like when it's like, oh, I don't feel good. Let me figure this out. And that's missing the whole point of this whole thing. It's like, I can't do this by myself. I never could, So fourth step was great. Fifth step, I did not have this like big cathartic experience that a lot of people talk about. It took a little while. It just felt really icky still. And 6 and 7, as I just explained, that's like still a work in progress. That's hard for me because I want to do it. I don't want to really wait for God to do it. I don't really want to trust and that the universe is going to take care of it on God's time. Like I want it done, and I want it done now. And if you want something done right, you do it yourself. So that's still something I'm working on. 8 and 9 is still, those are ongoing things for sure. And if you're on, well, I guess like what I would say with my experience from 9 was, none of the steps have been anything that I thought they were going to be. They would never, I remember being in a Bonner Park meeting, crying about the 9th step I was going to have to do, and all these guys I was going to have to apologize to because I just messed so many people's lives up from my brokenness and blah, blah, blah. Turns out the best thing I could do was stay away from all of those guys. I didn't have to make any amends to that. You know, it's like nothing of this has ever been what I thought it was going to be. And that's a relief, because I could have very easily like talked myself out of all of this if I didn't trust you all so much. And then 10, 11, and 12. So now like, I guess I forgot to mention in the beginning, my sobriety date is December 20th, 2019. So I'm just over 4 years now. So it's been a while since I've done like my official fourth step. I know I've heard like other people do fourth steps annually or something like that. I feel like the 10th step is a little bit of a fourth step. So if you're doing that every day, you get some of that. But how I get to go back through all those steps is through sponsoring other people. That's what like really keeps me anchored into the program. And like whenever they're going through their fourth step, like I'm also getting to go through that fourth step again and their fifth step and so on and so on. So sponsorship is a big important part of my program and recovery. And I'm so grateful. I am so grateful for the women who allow me to work with them in this space and give me grace, because I'm not perfect at this. I've had to make, and I'm sure I will continue to have to make lots of amends to my sponsees, because I'm learning this as they are. But luckily I also have a sponsor that I can lean into. She has a sponsor that she leans into. So we're never really doing this fully alone. But so what I brought my book because I don't lie much anymore, but what I do happen to do is I will remember things incorrectly and I will then reiterate them incorrectly. And sometimes that seems like little lies, but it's not. So I brought my book just to check myself. But I wanted to go a bit more into like 10, 11, and 12. So when I first, in the first conversation with my sponsor, she, told me a bit about herself. I told her about my story. And then she asked me to get out a notepad and told me to write down 4 to 7 meetings per week, 2 to 3 women per week, pages 83 through 88, 98 to 100 every day, 3rd step and 7th step prayer in those pages. And she was like, how do you feel about that? And I was like, seems a little excessive. Like, I don't even really think I'm an alcoholic, but like, whatever, I'll try it. So that has been like a baseline, that has worked really well for me to always come back to, and obviously don't do it perfectly, but I can remember in those first like 2 years, I'd call her with my hair on fire and she'd be like, well, how many meetings did you do this week? Did you read your pages this morning? How many people have you reached out to? And one of those were always like totally out of sync. I noticed that those are the things that when help keep me in a good balance. And prayer and meditation, I feel like those are the things in the steps that are constantly changing for me. But as long as I show up and try to keep doing them, but it's not really this like white light experience. Like sometimes meditation looks like sitting there quietly for 10 minutes. Sometimes it's a guided meditation. Sometimes it's a music meditation. And sometimes it's 90% of the time of me just like thinking. And then it's like, okay, yeah. Oh wait, breathe and like come back and then thinking. But the point of like, how does it say it? Like God doesn't make himself too hard to find for those who are seeking. It's like, as long as I'm at least showing up to seek. And like, when I take that time in the morning, it does make it a little easier for me to do my 10th step during the day. And then a little easier to do that 11th step at night of sweeping through. So part of 83 that we'll start says, yes, there's a long period of reconstruction ahead. We must take the lead. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fill the bill at all. We got to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. Their defects may be glaring, but chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. So we clean house of the family, asking each morning and meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. And so I have that highlighted because that's technically a prayer. So each morning, no matter what the meditation looks like, I'll sit down and ask my Creator, show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. And like something else I've picked up from like other meditation practices is to like try to feel that, like, what does that feel like? And some mornings that's impossible for me to try to feel what patience feels like, because I'm just not there, I'm just not there. but putting into like, what would that look like taking into my day? What does that look like taking that into work? What does that look like taking into conversations with my partner or my family that day? The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time, which I've read that 1,000 times and I still did not follow that so well because I think that I'm right. And if everybody just believed in God the way that I believed in God, my life would be so much easier. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter, and there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. If we are painstaking about these phases of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through the 9th step, that is. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. And then into step 10, there's another part that says, or it just explains about continuing to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And to be honest, most times I don't catch that until the end of the day. But with a lot of practice and pause, whenever I feel one of those things, and if I'm doing this work in the morning, that helps set it up for me to notice it a bit more to make potential damage a lot worse, or the impact of that not as bad. And then for 11, it gives very clear instructions of when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? I like to also throw like a big gratitude list in there too, so that I'm not just constantly looking at like what did I did wrong, or like where are all the things that selfish, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, like those don't really feel good to reflect on. So I like to keep like a positive inventory of that as well, of like everything I'm grateful for and thankful for that happened that day. But also in the morning, upon awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day before we begin. Ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. And then the last part, on page 87, we usually conclude this period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all throughout the day what our next step is to be, and that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no requests for ourselves only. So what my meditation looks like, it might be different, but I try to hit on those things. And I wanted to talk about it just because if somebody hadn't talked about it with me and explained like these are instructions that you can use, I would have not have picked them out from the book like this. Like I was reading them over and over and over again every day, but I still didn't kind of pick them out in that way. So I'll sit and ask for my Creator to show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. Ask that He direct my thinking and especially divorce it from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. And then ask especially for freedom from self-will, and thank God for giving me whatever I need to take care of such problems throughout the day. And then the 3rd step and 7th step, prayer. And I'm so grateful for the tools that this program has given me, but more the open mind and open heart that it gives me to have a relationship with my higher power. And I think it's important to talk about because I wouldn't have the relationship I have today if it weren't for the way you guys talked about your higher powers. Like today I have enough of an open mind where it's like, I'm a part of a church. I can go to Buddhist meditations. Like I can dabble in all of those things and appreciate them that I did not have before this program. If it wasn't for this program, I would not have the open-mindedness to even do stuff like that. And hearing the way you all talk about your experience of coming to and your experience with your higher power as you understand it is so, so, so helpful for me. And I also remember somebody saying, you know, if you don't have your higher power yet, like you can borrow mine. And that had gotten me through, quite a couple of nights. And it's just really, funny. And I get so taken aback because, I feel like there's so much that I don't deserve, that like the grace and love that our higher powers have for all of us, that like when I think it's not paying attention, you know, and then I get somebody will say something, or this video will come up on my YouTube feed, or like something just falls right in my lap, and it's like the reminder that it's like I'm never alone. I'm never alone in this. There's a part in here, I don't remember where it is, but Bill refers to you know, God as his newfound friend with a capital F. And like, that's not a God that I was aware. I didn't know that God could be your friend. And I feel like today, my higher power is absolutely my best friend, where, partner who's also in the program, like we have very different ideas of our higher powers and how that works. And like, when I pray, I mean, I am gib gabbing to God like a girl. And he's like, God's got stuff to do. Like, come on, let's get on the road, which is great. You know, he prays in his way, I pray in my way. But like, the more that I can bring God into every little thing. And something else that's been helpful is my sponsor would always tell me, like, breathe God in, breathe out self, breathe God in, breathe out self. So it's like those little things I can take with me in any moment before a difficult conversation, like just inviting God into it. And it's just a lot less work for me, which is really nice. And then being able to trust, because I don't know what anybody in this room needs. I can think that I know what you need. I could bet that I could know that for sure. But the truth is I don't, but your higher power does. And the more that I can try to like keep this vessel clear of that resentment, selfish, dishonest, and fear, the more that I can kind of keep that house clean, the more that my higher power can use me for whatever's needed, because I just simply don't know what that is. Easier said than done. Much, much, much easier said than done. And I love the humanness that we all have in this program. I appreciate the experience that I've had of like putting people on pedestals and seeing them get knocked clean off those pedestals. Like I've really, really needed that, because we all really do just have one day at a time, and we don't do it perfectly. And we get to have a lot of fun. And one of the last things that I'll just touch on is like fellowship. Because as a former party girl, like that was all I knew. And like AA, like, did that mean that I couldn't wear makeup anymore or like dress up in my cute clothes? Like I just, it was so unappealing, because my whole goal in life was to look as cute as I could and get as drunk as I could. And you guys weren't doing that. So I just like assumed that it was going to be really dull. But it's not. You guys are like, I loved hanging out with alcoholics in the bar. I didn't like people who weren't alcoholic because they just were weird. Alcoholics were always the most fun to hang out with in the bar. And it turns out you're the most fun to hang out with sober too. Had a girls' weekend a couple weekends ago that was just a blast. My friend's cousin is in right now with 19 other people from the program. And like, I'm a little off this morning because I stayed up too late last night and gorged on corn dip from Costco, which is amazing. If anybody's ever had it, they like put crack in it. So I got a little like food fellowship hangover today, but well worth it. And it's just such a lovely experience, and I don't miss it. I don't miss it at all. And I can't believe that I spent the first 27 years of my life constantly thinking about drinking, constantly obsessing about drinking. And now I almost never think about it. It is almost never a thought that crosses my mind. Sometimes I'll still see like a glass of wine or a commercial, or it's a nice day or something, and I'm like, ooh. And that was described to me as like those strange mental blind spots. And the way that was explained was, it's like if you have these two ping pong paddles and like one of them has a hole in it, like that's your strange mental blind spot. And if you don't have your God guard over it, like eventually that ball is going to go back through it. So if I don't stay plugged into the program, into you guys, like that thought of like, ooh, that glass of red wine looks really good. Like that thought will become a thing and I'll drink it unless I have that guard being like, oh, but I don't do that anymore, you know, and the ability, the choice in that, because I don't have a choice without Alcoholics Anonymous. And you all, and yeah, so I feel like I'm also very much trying to dig back into like the joy and the fun of the fellowship, because I am 4 years in now, and I feel like the drama of just like the very newness is over, and like sober living has become very routine for me. And you start to take a lot of it for granted. And I really want certain things, you know, I get really tied up in my goals and the way that things I want and the way I think that things should be. And I totally miss like, the fun that can be had and the joy that, can be had. So I'm really now making a goal to have more joy and to have more fun. So I'll keep y'all posted on how that works out. But I think that's all I got. Thank you, everybody, for being here and letting me share.